Hey everyone, and welcome back to a very quick video. We have one example involving trigonometric functions and a quick review of how to write tangent lines specifically when we have to find the derivative using our calculator. Now on the AP exam, remember that there are calculator-based and non-calculator-based components to that exam. So you need to know how to approach every problem with or without a calculator. Now here we're going to be allowed to use a calculator. So I'm going to focus primarily on that. So when we want to find the equations for a tangent or a normal line for this graph, we need to remember that the slope is the derivative at that point of tangency. The x and the y value that we're going to use are the x that's given to us, here it's 2, and then we need to find the y value of the function. So we actually need to find f of 2. So let's review a little bit about how we use our calculator. And you can see I've already put a screenshot of the resulting derivative here, just to make sure that that stays on my screen. But the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and I'm going to plug my function in. So I'm going to say tangent of x. I'm going to put lots of parentheses around my function, divided by x. And so there's my function like that. I don't even need to look at the graph. I mean, I can. And as a matter of fact, if I look at the graph, here are a couple of tricks. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can find the derivative. But here's the graph on the standard, 10 to 10. Sometimes using that zoom trig function might be nice because the zoom trig function automatically changes your scale to be graphing along, pi over 2, pi over 4, things like that. Another quick note to make sure of is that you want to always make sure that your mode is in radian mode. When you're dealing with trig functions in calculus, you will always be in radian mode. There are no degrees in calculus. Technically, a degree is not a number. It's its own weird thing, and maybe that's a video for another day. But radians are numeric values. So when we talk about radians, there's 2 pi radians in a circle, and it's the way of things in calculus. So always radians, all the time. So when we look at this graph and I want to find a value, one way to do this from the graphing screen is to hit second trace. So that's the F4 button. So if I go to the calc menu, I can do a value, and it wants to know what value. So I'm going to type in 2, right? So, and then the graph will spit it out for me, and it'll say, oh, 1.0925. I'm going to write that whole thing down. So f of 2 is 1.0925. This is my y1 value, okay? So my x1 is going to be 2. So there's my point, right? So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. There's my x1 and my y1. Now, when I go to find the derivative, check this out. I'm going to go to that same menu, second trace, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to choose option number 6. And then it wants to know what value, right? So it wants to calculate the derivative at a point. Now with this, let's see. I think I can just, if I hit 2, boom, it'll take me right there. I have to type in the number 2. It didn't ask for it. It wasn't as quite of a nice user-friendly little experience there. But if you just type in 2, even though it's not asking you for it, it'll land you there and it'll say, oh, look, there's x, and look, we didn't even need to do that first step because it tells us the x and the y, and there's the slope. There's all the information you need right there on your calculator screen. So my slope here is this 3.4334783, and remember, 3 places is what we want to go to when we're dealing with the AP exam. Now I'm always going to write down more than 3, but you cannot go less than 3. The AP graders will grade the first 3 digits. After that, if they're off a little bit, you're not going to get dinged. The first 3 digits have to be accurate, either rounded or what we call truncated. So in this case, I'll show you what that means when we round or truncate the y1. I'll explain that again in case you don't know what that word truncate means. But here's my slope. Another way that I could have found this is I could have just done it, algebraically. I could have just been like, type in tangent of 2 divided by 2, and I would have gotten my y value. And then how do we get this value here on the screen? Well, this is the math 8 function. So math, and then option number 8 is your numerical derivative. Now, different calculators will display this differently, but if you have one of the older operating systems, you can type in, I'll write down on the screen what that would look like, but essentially here with this new one, you're going to type in x, and then if you already have something typed into y1, there's two ways to recall the y1 equation. You don't have to type it again. If you hit alpha trace, it pops these options up. Now, if you have an older calculator, another way to get to those is to use the vars button. So if you go to vars, and then yvars, and then option number 1 is your function. Well, there's your y1 screen. So you can choose that to pop in there, and then when x equals 2, and then if you hit enter, it'll evaluate that number using whatever equation is in y1. So now that we have gotten all of our information, so this is my slope. Here's what it's going to look like. Now, let's talk about rounding and truncating. So if I round the y value, I'm going to use 1.093. If I truncate, I'm literally cutting off the extra digits. Truncating is just taking 1, 2, 3, and then cutting off any remaining digits, so 1.092. I don't care which one you do. The AP exam doesn't care which one you do, so choose one or the other and just do that. But 3 places of accuracy is what you need. So I'm going to use the rounded version 1.093 equals 3.433 x minus 2. So there's my equation of my tangent line. Now I also wanted the normal line. So in my calculator, I'm going to say 1 divided by second answer. That's going to be my new slope. Remember, it's the reciprocal. So you just do 1 divided by that number and then make it negative. So you have to use the opposite. So negative 0.291. So negative 0.291 is your new slope. Your point stays the same. Ta-da! This is the normal line. So normal and tangent. So there's the approximations for those normal and tangent lines, and I hope you learned some new calculator tricks. Again, I said I would write down the older operating system. If your screen just shows n deriv, then what you're going to do is you are going to type in the equation, or y1, comma x, comma, and then the number. That will evaluate your numerical derivative of this function with respect to x at whatever value. So this is another way that your calculator screen might show things. So I hope this has been helpful, and remember, stick with it, and the faster you can be at evaluating these types of problems, the more time you're going to save on your AP exam and the more successful you'll be overall. And as always, reach out with questions and keep at it, you guys. You've got this.